had inherited Dr. Dre's beef by signing with Dre.
Suge Knight, a name so fearsome it made the whole hip-hop world shudder. This was a man who didn't just instill fear, he ruled through sheer force. Stories of his relentless cruelty spread far and wide. Suge wasn't merely intimidating, he was infamous for brutally beating people, forcing them into unspeakable acts and, according to legend, even hanging them off balconies to coerce their signatures. No one dared to stand against him. He was the industry's ultimate villain, the boogeyman behind the music. But one man didn't care about Suge's reputation. That man was Eminem. Slim Shady wasn't fazed by threats, intimidation, or anyone trying to scare him off. When Suge's menacing shadow loomed, Eminem didn't back down. Because here's the truth about Eminem. He grew up in Detroit, a city that hardened him. From the rough streets of 8 Mile, he learned how to survive the toughest situations. Suge may have been the most dreaded figure in hip-hop, but Eminem wasn't about to be bullied. He'd seen it all and wasn't afraid of anything. That unshakable courage came into sharp focus on one of hip-hop's most electrifying nights. In 1999, at the Source Awards, Suge's enforcers tried to flex their muscle. But Eminem, unrelenting as ever, wasn't having it. Eminem was already creating a massive buzz. With his album, the Slim Shady LP, fresh on the charts and his single My Name Is, blazing the airwaves, he wasn't just a new face. He was the center of attention. He'd gone from newcomer to hip-hop sensation almost overnight. It was no surprise that he was asked to present the Best Live Performer award to DMX at the Source Awards. But what no one saw behind the scenes was the high-stakes drama. As Eminem made his way to his seat, Suge Knight's enforcers were suddenly all around him. The atmosphere was electric, and not in a good way. Tension crackled in the air, but Eminem stayed cool. He calmly walked on stage, delivered the award to DMX, and then returned to his seat as if nothing had happened. Not a flinch, not a stutter, just pure composure. Yet that wasn't the end of it. Even as the event wrapped up, Suge's men weren't backing down. They waited outside, ready to pounce as Eminem and his security made their exit. It begged the question, why was the CEO of one of hip-hop's most iconic record labels targeting a young artist like Eminem? To understand that, you need to dig into the wild and chaotic world of Death Row Records during that era. In the mid-1990s, Death Row Records wasn't just the top label. It was a phenomenon. They churned out legendary releases like Dr. Dre's The Chronic, Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, and Tupac's All Eyes on Me. These albums not only defined the era, but also made Death Row seem invincible. On the surface, they had it all: prestige, money, and hits. But behind the scenes, the label's name started to mean something much darker. Fear, intimidation, and a brutal sense of control ruled at Death Row's core. And at the center of it all was Suge Knight. Suge's methods weren't just aggressive, they were outright criminal. He once forced 2 rappers to strip naked at gunpoint and then pistol whip them simply for using the office phones without permission. If someone in the label crossed him, Suge didn't just fire them. He dragged them into the storeroom and beat them mercilessly. The screams echoing through the walls were chilling, but employees quickly learned to keep their heads down. They knew better than to get involved. Soon the violent culture spread. Other artists on the label started emulating Suge's cutthroat ways. Chaos became the norm at Death Row. For Dr. Dre, it was unbearable. His only focus was on the music, not the madness. When the atmosphere became too toxic, Dre knew it was time to leave. Dr. Dre made a daring move. He walked away from Death Row Records, leaving behind all his royalties and earnings. For Dre, the music mattered more than the turmoil. He wasn't willing to let chaos overshadow his creativity. After his exit, Dre launched his own label, Aftermath Records. But Suge Knight wasn't going to let it slide. He saw Dre's departure as a betrayal. Determined to make him pay, Suge tried everything to derail Dre's career. At first, Suge didn't have to do much. Aftermath stumbled out of the gate, falling far short of Death Row's enormous hits. Dre's early projects fizzled, and fans began to wonder if the once unbeatable producer had lost his magic. Then one fateful demo tape changed everything. While sifting through stacks of demos with Jimmy Iovine, Dre stopped cold at a single voice. "Who the hell is this?" he asked. That voice belonged to Eminem, a young Detroit rapper struggling to survive. Raised by a single mother, Eminem endured poverty, relentless bullying, and constant hardships. But those challenges fueled his determination. In Detroit's underground rap battles, Eminem fought hard to prove himself. Eminem's raw talent was undeniable. His rhymes hit harder than anyone had heard before, blending razor-sharp wit with brutal honesty. Dre knew he'd stumbled upon something extraordinary. Without hesitation, he signed Eminem to Aftermath Records, and together they began working on what would become a groundbreaking debut album. At the same time, Suge Knight's hostility toward Dre only intensified. As Dre and Eminem started to gain traction, Suge tried to exert his influence through intimidation and rumors. He even had his people tail them just to remind Dre that he hadn't escaped death row's shadow. But Dre and Eminem didn't back down. The harder Suge pushed, the more determined they became. Their studio sessions were electric, fueled by both creative energy and the pressure of proving everyone wrong. By the time the Slim Shady LP dropped, it wasn't just a debut, it was a statement. Eminem was no longer just a struggling artist, he was a star. And Dre wasn't just a producer in decline, he was the genius behind the resurgence of a new era in hip-hop. The release of the Slim Shady LP sent shockwaves through the music world. Eminem's unapologetic storytelling, controversial lyrics, and unique flow made the album an instant classic. Tracks like My Name Is and Guilty Conscience exploded on the charts, earning Eminem both acclaim and backlash. The buzz surrounding him was deafening. People couldn't stop talking about this bold, brash white rapper from Detroit. While the industry was captivated by Eminem's rise, Suge Knight was seething. He couldn't stand to see Dre thriving outside of death row, especially with an artist who was shattering every expectation. Rumors swirled that Suge was plotting behind the scenes, attempting to tarnish Dre and Eminem's growing reputation. The tension was palpable, but neither Dre nor Eminem flinched. They kept pushing forward, focused on their music and the growing fan base that couldn't get enough of the raw, unfiltered energy they brought to the table. As Eminem's fame skyrocketed, so did the controversies. He became a lightning rod for criticism, with headlines debating his impact and lyrics. But if anything, the firestorm only made him stronger. Every attack turned into fuel, and his defiance became part of his legend. It was clear, Eminem wasn't just a rising star, he was reshaping the entire landscape of hip-hop. Being a white rapper in a predominantly black genre only made Eminem's climb steeper, but his unparalleled energy and cutting-edge lyrics set him apart. In 1998, Dr. Dre took a massive chance, signing Eminem to Aftermath Records. Together they crafted the Slim Shady LP, a groundbreaking album that flipped the script for both artists. When it debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and sold a staggering 283,000 copies in its first week, the music world took notice. The album didn't just elevate Eminem, it redefined him. Winning a Grammy for Best Rap Album, he proved his legitimacy on the biggest stage. For Dr. Dre, it was a triumphant return to the top of the industry. Their partnership quickly became the stuff of legend, one of the most iconic duos hip-hop had ever seen. But not everyone celebrated their success. Suge Knight, now watching from the sidelines, saw the rising duo as a threat. By then, Death Row Records was in turmoil. Tupac was gone, Suge was behind bars, Snoop Dogg had become another problem for him. Like Dre, Snoop refused to play into the East Coast versus West Coast rivalry. He chose his own path, staying friends with people Suge viewed as enemies. This independent streak didn't sit well with Suge. The tension reached a boiling point when he allegedly threatened Snoop's life, an explosive moment that underscored just how far the power dynamics in hip-hop had shifted. You could hear it in his voice. He didn't want to be there. Fearing for his safety, Snoop Dogg knew it was time to leave. Cutting ties with Death Row was the only choice. When Snoop walked away, it marked the end of an era. Suge Knight had lost every superstar that once defined his empire, and the mighty label he built was now crumbling. Meanwhile, Dr. Dre and Eminem were on fire. Their albums topped charts, scooped up awards, and cemented their status as cultural trailblazers. The duo was unstoppable, and Suge couldn't stand it. He viewed their success as a personal attack. In his mind, Eminem wasn't just another artist, he was an enemy. Suge's bitterness turned into action. He began trying to discredit both Dre and Eminem, throwing accusations and stirring up controversy. In a 2002 Howard Stern interview, Suge publicly questioned Eminem's authenticity, insinuating that he was just a white rapper playing a part, not someone truly rooted in the streets. But words weren't enough. Suge stepped up the intimidation. In 1999, when Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg organized a death row reunion party in Hawaii, Eminem tagged along. What was supposed to be a relaxing getaway with family and friends quickly took a dark turn as Suge's influence loomed over them the moment they landed. The laid-back vibe quickly evaporated. As soon as the group arrived, they were met with ominous whispers. Suge's men were nearby, watching, waiting. It was no secret that Suge still had influence, even from behind bars. He wanted to send a message, reminding everyone that no matter how far they'd come, he still cast a long shadow. Eminem, however, wasn't one to back down. His focus remained on his craft, channeling any fear or frustration into his music. The tension only fueled his lyrics, making his bars sharper, his performances more electric. As he continued to rise, it became clear that no amount of intimidation would stop him. For Suge, it was a bitter pill to swallow. His empire was in ruins, his influence waning, and yet Dre and Eminem were thriving. Their music resonated with millions, transcending the drama of death row's past. Even as Suge's tactics grew more desperate, Eminem's ascent only accelerated, proving that talent, drive, and sheer determination could outshine even the darkest threats. As Eminem's success skyrocketed, he became an unstoppable force in hip-hop. Hits like The Real Slim Shady and Stan dominated the airwaves, catapulting him to a level of fame few rappers had ever achieved. He was no longer just a rising star, he was a cultural phenomenon. Despite the constant criticisms and controversies, Eminem continued to break barriers, earning the respect of his peers and solidifying his legacy as one of the greatest MCs of all time. For Dr. Dre, it was a reaffirmation of his vision. Taking a chance on Eminem had been a gamble, but it paid off beyond anyone's expectations. The partnership not only revitalized Dre's career, but also reshaped the hip-hop landscape, proving that creative risk-taking could lead to unprecedented success. Meanwhile, Suge Knight watched from the sidelines as his influence faded. His attempts to discredit Eminem and Dre only made their story more compelling. The two artists, who had faced adversity at every turn, were now the kings of the industry, proving that determination and talent could triumph over even the most daunting obstacles. Things escalated. In 2001, during the filming of 50 Cent's In Day Club video, Suge Knight showed up once again, this time with an even larger entourage. Tensions were high, but Eminem didn't back down. He walked straight outside to confront Suge and his crew, displaying a calm resilience that stunned onlookers. Despite these encounters, Eminem rarely spoke openly about Suge. But in 2004, his track Like Toy Soldiers offered a glimpse into why. In the song, Eminem revealed that Dr. Dre had specifically warned him to stay out of the ongoing feud. Taking Dre's advice to heart, Eminem chose to remain quiet rather than stoke the flames. That didn't stop Suge from taking potshots. On a podcast called Collect Call with Suge Knight, featuring comedian Cal Williams, Suge criticized Eminem's involvement in a posthumous Tupac project. Suge claimed the album was a flop, despite the fact that it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and went platinum. Fans were quick to call out Suge's statement, seeing it as yet another attempt to stir up old beef. Still, the comment left some wondering, did Suge have a point? The story traces back to 2003, when Eminem reached out to Tupac's mother, Afeni Shakur, seeking her blessing to produce a posthumous album honoring Tupac's legacy. Afeni agreed, and in 2004, Eminem released Loyal to the Game. While the album performed well commercially, critics were divided. Some praised the project's ambition, while others felt it didn't quite capture Tupac's essence. Fans of Tupac criticized the album, saying it lacked his raw West Coast energy. Instead, they felt it sounded too polished, too modern, more like an Eminem production than a true Tupac project. To many, it didn't fully capture the essence of Tupac's original style. Eminem stayed silent, at least publicly. But then in the early days of 2025, a bombshell hit the hip-hop world. A previously unreleased Eminem diss track from the mid-2000s leaked online. Titled Smack You, the track was absolutely savage. Some fans speculated that releasing it back in the day would have been too dangerous, potentially putting a massive target on Eminem's back. But now, in hindsight, it was being called one of the hardest diss tracks ever recorded. The song took direct aim at Ja Rule and Suge Knight. Eminem ruthlessly mocked Ja Rule's stature and criticized his parenting, then turned the heat up on Suge. The lyrics accused Suge Knight of being involved in the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, one of hip-hop's most provocative accusations. The fact that Eminem, even at the height of Suge's intimidation, was willing to record something so bold only solidifies his reputation as someone who never backs down. Eminem's fearlessness in the face of hip-hop's biggest controversies proves he's always ready to stand his ground.